My name is Frank Davis Ashburn, and I was headmaster of Brooks School for 46 years. Endicott Peabody, the headmaster at Groton, offered me a chance to start a new school, new boys' school. And I think almost everybody, my friends and family, they all thought I was a fool to take to a chancy job like that and schoolmastering where I'd never make more than a decent living. But I fooled them all. I've always maintained that the early faculty was the greatest in the world, certainly the greatest in the United States.
If I had to pull out just one main legacy of Frank Ashburn's that's permanent and never-ending, it's this. It's institutional strength. Just think of the names: Westgate, Waterston, Bada, Thompson, Scudder. These are great names in American education.
I'm J. Tower Thompson, who came to Brooks School in 1928, the second year of the school, at the age of 21. The first year I lived in Old Whitney in the dormitory. The second year I lived in the second floor of New Whitney. Then they built Gardner House and I moved down to Gardner House. He could crack down when it became necessary, but he was always anxious to give people a second chance if he possibly could. I mean, I think he was really quite admirable.
I taught French, history, English, name your poison. It seemed to me we were willing to teach anything. Yeah, no mathematics, thank God, because that I couldn't have done properly. Since I don't think I was ever a very easy person to control, I tended to do what I pleased, I'm afraid. And as a result, I'm sure Mr. Ashburn was very long-suffering. I think there were many times when he wished that he could get rid of me. And
the faculty in the late 60s respected him so much that they actually gave him a prize on Prize Day, and those were the qualities they were honoring. They were honoring his, ironically, his openness to new things, his decisive leadership, his values that were repeated over and over again in chapel and other places.
You had to love the job. I think that probably was a main requirement, that you had to love being a schoolmaster.
Every boy in school knew that the headmaster cared very much about him, cared what he did, cared how he did it, and whatever it was, the headmaster would take an interest and would try and help.
You made a difference, a great difference, Frank, in my life. I think I'm a much better person than I otherwise would have been because of your example. You were great, and you made us feel important and that we would remain important as long as we behaved ourselves in later life.
And he had a compassion for students, and when students needed encouragement, he gave it to them. He didn't browbeat them and intimidate them and throw them out.
I particularly remember his lecture on Darwin, and he kind of spelled out that series of principles that Darwin developed to define evolution, and they remain very vivid in my mind. Especially as a few years ago I finally got to the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin pretty much hatched his theory, and which are absolutely fascinating.
He was always a caring individual, and one of the things that I remember is from the earliest days he knew our names, and of course as someone who'd arrived from 300 miles away, that was very comforting that in fact the head of the school was willing to know my name, as meager as I was as a third former.
He was a calmer of the waters, no matter how intense the situation. I can just remember him tapping on his pipe, kind of working with it, not saying anything. Then he'd take a few drags, blow the smoke out, and just a few words, and he would have diffused the whole thing, whatever it was. And I don't even remember what they were.
It was a short walk from his office over to the admissions office, but it was clear when we arrived that filling out the paperwork was the most important thing, that somehow he had gotten to the director of admissions before we'd gotten over there and given me a great chance in life, and that was to be admitted to Brooks School.
The school is not Brooks School, it's a Brooks School and all its graduates. And every one of you has your own special place in the school. There's not one that we don't remember and remember fondly. Even the rascals.
We took on a lot of rascals who did well.
Now, I think the rascals that Mr. Ashburn's talking about, yes, I think I knew quite a few of them. I won't say that I was included, but I might have been. I think what he liked was somebody with an independent spirit who would challenge the routine way of going about anything, learning or just living.
I remember it must have been 35, 6, 7 in there when the Giants and the Yankees were playing a Subway Series. And he said, if anybody wanted to bet a nickel on it, why, I'm betting my money on Carl Hubble, and I'll take all takers. I'll accept all takers. He was wonderful that way, and he only had a nickel curveball himself.
Frank Ashburn had a lot of faith in boys, and particularly boys that had difficulty in growing up, boys that would get into trouble, boys who just wouldn't do what you wanted them to do, who had a lot of ability, but they just hadn't done anything with that ability. He was a great believer in second chances, and he would give these boys a second chance, and it has paid off over the years.
I recall one day the boss held up a fork that someone had bent in half, and somebody laughed out loud, and Frank turned a withering look on this fellow and said, anybody who would laugh at this doesn't deserve to be at Brooks. I remember that very, very well because I was the guy who had laughed.
Mr. Ashburn called for a squeeze play. And so as soon as the pitcher went into his motion, I started to run for home. Well, the batter missed the bunt and the catcher had me out, but I ran into him like a football player and knocked the ball loose, and I was safe, and I jumped up and down and yelled. And when I get back to the bench, Mr. Ashburn called me over and said, Skip, that's not the way we play baseball at Brooks School.
Leadership is the ability to get inside the people that you're dealing with and make them want to perform beyond their ordinary range and capacity.
He held the school together during the war years, and they must have been extremely tough. The masters went off to war, some of his student body went off to war, and he kept the place afloat.
He set very high standards for himself, and then expected very high standards out of those that he worked with, students and faculty and so forth.
He listened, which is important. He was very intelligent and still is, and had a wonderful sense of humor, which has still stayed with him. And he was very forthright. You could always count on him.
If the school has a body, FDA was the head and the heart, providing the direction, the brains, and the blood to keep us all alive. His vision led us through some really tough years.
You may call it a legacy of Frank Ashburn, but certainly the basic values, the attention to the kids, a tremendous focus on working with each kid and developing an interest in that kid. I sense that that's still a key value of the school.
If you have the right institutional structures, you can have a chance to get people on the track again. You can have passions moved into a productive direction. From the time you met him, you realize this was a man of strong moral principle, a man very well educated, well read, also had an appreciation for the frailties of human nature, and therefore understood why you had rules, why you had an education, that the flaws of human nature can be molded or at least directed in a way that can be positive, and you never doubted the man's integrity.
Watch over our school, O Lord, as its years increase, and bless and guide her sons wherever they may be. Let their hearts be warm with the flame of their boyhood ideals, their faith unshaken, their principles immovable. Strengthen them when they stand, comfort and help them when they are weak-hearted, raise them up if they fail. Let its radiance lead them heavenward, and in their hearts may your peace, which passeth understanding, abide all the days of their life.